What's going on, guys? And I have an important announcement. As you guys have seen on Facebook, the Warcry podcast now has a merch store through Redbubble. What you'll do is you'll hit that link below, select the logo that you like. You know, we got a wolf logo, we got that Bigfoot scratch or the Dogman scratch logo. Once you select the logo, you'll go down, hit your styles. If you want a T-shirt, if you want a sweatshirt, or if you want different things, or a sticker or whatever. You'll select the color of that, and then your size, and then you hit that checkout button. And hitting that checkout button and getting that T-shirt supports the podcast. And I appreciate everyone that listens, and it's amazing, and I do truly appreciate it. But with that said, let's get to the episode. So run me my music. It's very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Keep that crowd warmed up. Is Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to another edition of the Warcry podcast. I am your host, Jehovah Tiger. On this episode, I had teased some things. I had teased doing some more interviews for 2024. I'm very selective, but when someone has, the goods and the information, I have to have them on. And joining me today is Mr. Patrick Meechan. I'm going to give a quick bio, but Patrick is the author of the books Nightmare in Holmes County and 225th Street, which tell terrifying true stories of spiritual warfare and paranormal activity in real-life haunted houses. Both books are share not only the details of these real-life encounters with the demonic realm, but they also share many scriptures throughout to give a biblical perspective of spiritual warfare. Patrick is also the author of a forthcoming book called Shadows and Light, Volume 1, which will also share true stories of victory over the demonic realm through the power of Christ. Patrick is also the host of Stranger Than Fiction podcast, which explores spiritual warfare, the unexplained, and end-time events from a Christian perspective. The Stranger Than Fiction podcast can be seen on YouTube and Rumble. Patrick's books are also available at Amazon, such as paperback, Kindle, and audiobooks. Patrick, I appreciate you coming on, man. How's it going?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And so one thing about this podcast is we talk about basically everything. And what piqued my interest, were your first two books. And just give the audience, if they haven't heard you, I know you've done different interviews, but, everybody's new at something, but can you give everybody kind of a quick intro or, quick kind of beginning of how you came across these certain books or how you came about with those experiences?
Yes, sir. I often say it like this. I had the somewhat unique experience of having two consecutive yet unrelated haunted houses. And the reason it is unique, I believe, is because they are unrelated. Certainly, if you live in one haunted house and it's not dealt with properly, you can have things follow you to the next. But in my case, the first house was dealt with, and I moved into another house and fully intended on writing a book about the first house because the deliverance I experienced was so miraculous. I felt like I have to share this. And in the second house, I'm starting to try to write Nightmare in Holmes County, and I keep having strange things happening. And I thought, man, if I didn't know any better, I would swear this house is haunted, but there's no way something followed me from Holmes County, So I come to have it confirmed to me beyond shadow of a doubt. Oh yeah, this house is haunted too. And it was haunted over a decade before I was ever even born.
Wow.
So it certainly was not a situation of something following me from one location to another. But to start it all off, in in the fall of 2001, me and my now ex-wife purchased a piece of land in Holmes County, Ohio, and fully intended on building our dream home and living there happily ever after. And to those who don't know, Holmes County, Ohio is the first or second largest population of Amish in the world.
Mm.
It alternates between Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio.
Mm.
And very large Amish population. And I'm not Amish, but I thought, this is going to be very peaceful here. It's beautiful, beautiful land, beautiful countryside. This is too good to be true. So in early 2002, we broke ground. We hired a builder who had been brought up Amish, but had jumped the fence. That's the term used for when someone leaves the Amish church. But he was still very close to the Amish, and he subcontracted a lot of work to the Amish. So he was very close with them still. And we hired him to build our dream home. And they started early in the year. And by March, the foundation was poured, the basement was all built, and they were building the upstairs. And they had framed up the whole first floor and second floor. And it was completely framed up. And one Saturday night, I was working and I got a phone call at work, and it was from my builder. And he said, "I did not have the heart to tell your wife this, so I'm telling you." He said, "We had a really bad storm and your house is flattened. It's completely demolished." And he kept saying, "In all my years of building, I have never seen anything like this." He repeatedly stated that.
Wow.
Well, this individual was in his late 60s, and he had been building homes and doing construction his whole life. And Amish individuals start working those hard labor jobs very early in life, so he had a lot of experience.
So he knew what he was doing.
Yes, and he kept saying, "I've never seen anything like this."
Man.
Now, we did have a freak storm, but we went out and looked at the house, and it was literally flat. The whole upstairs and first floor were flat. It was all laying up on the first floor in a huge heap, and they ended up having to start over again.
Man.
And I thought, well, it's just bad luck. We had a bad storm. That's what I thought. And as time wore on, though, strange things began to happen. Now, this builder's building crew was a little bit odd. His son was a really nice guy, and he was one of the main ones on the crew, and he was a very nice guy and good worker, just a good person. They had a couple other guys that one was kind of strange, and in the book I changed his name to Abe, and Abe lived on the top of a hill that oversaw the valley where our house sat. And as it turned out, Abe was a very strange individual. But strange things began to happen. I would notice that, like, as the house was being built, I would stop by frequently and just check in on them and see how things were going. And when it was hot out that summer, I would take them lemonade, things like that, just to be nice, just to be a good guy to them. I knew they were working hard. And one day I stopped and I was talking to them, and they were taking a break, and they were in the garage. And Abe was sitting against the wall, like on his lunchbox or on a bucket or something. He was sitting there leaning against the wall. And the whole time I was talking to the builder, Abe had this very strange look on his face, like he was freaked out. His eyes were big. He wouldn't talk. He just seemed extremely nervous. And so I'm carrying on a conversation with the builder about what they were doing and whatnot. And all of a sudden, Abe blurts out, "There was a man here last night."
Whoa.
And I said, and I thought about it, and I thought, okay, my wife and her friend I think she showed them the house last night. So that's what, it's her friend's boyfriend. No big deal, you know. And I said, oh yeah, I know. And I explained that. And he said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, I had to have my car worked on last night. And he said, I took a shortcut down your road. We lived on a township road that connected the road he lived on to a major, state route 62. And it was a 1 mile township road that was a shortcut to get over to state route 62, where there was a garage where his car was going to be worked on. And so he was driving his car over to the garage, and then he was going to walk home. And he claimed that when he drove by our house, he saw a man standing in the brush at the edge of the property line watching the house.
Huh.
And he said he looked really scary. He said, as a matter of fact, I didn't even walk this road home. I took the long way home because I did not want to walk past that guy and see him again.
Oh,
now,
man.
if he's telling the truth, he went, a couple miles out of his way. He definitely went way out of his way by avoiding that shortcut,
he must have,
and he was walking. So that's kind of strange.
He must have.
And I looked at him and I said, I have guns. And I said, if anybody comes around here and messes with this, they're going to get shot. And when I said that, he got a really freaked out look. But the builder, he kept saying, yeah, that's right. A man's got to protect his family. And I just thought it was odd. But as time wore on and the building, the completion of the house nears, I would stop, and we did a lot of the work inside ourselves. We painted the whole interior ourselves. We stained and finished the woodwork and the doors and things like that. So I would stop by and spend a lot of time there, staining and varnishing doors, and I would be alone. And I always would feel like I was being watched. And I just attributed that to, I'm not familiar with this area. There's nothing but farms surrounding me. When it gets dark out, there's not even a security light down on the electric pole. So it's pitch dark out here. I'm sure that's all it is. So I convinced myself of that, but I still felt very unnerved. I began taking a boombox with worship music. I would take like Christian music and listen to while I worked, and it took the edge off. So it seemed to help. So I just kind of pushed it all out of my mind. But once the house was finished and we moved in, strange things began to happen. Initially, we found out, there were very strange noises, and it actually would sound like the house was going to fall in. It was a brand new house, and just very strange noises. And as it turned out, the builder took some shortcuts, and there were things that were not done properly that needed to be addressed. And we hired some house inspectors, and they came in and looked at everything, and they found all the problems. So at the time, we were going to sue the builder and make him at least have this fixed. But as it turned out, the attorney we hired ended up being the assistant prosecutor in Holmes County. And when it came time to, we tried to mediate, and the builder wouldn't cooperate. So the attorney said, well, think it over. And if you want to sue him, let me know. Well, okay. We thought it over. We thought we don't have any choice. We have to sue him. He has to fix this stuff. And when I would call the attorney, he would never take the calls, and he would never call me back. So we basically came to the place where we paid a couple gentlemen that we went to church with that were older men. They were brothers, and they had both done construction for years and years and years. Excuse me. And we hired them, and they came in and fixed everything. So I was then, at this time now, we're now into the spring of 2003. And I'm thinking, okay, everything's out of the way. Everything's set. We're good. The house is fixed. I'm going to put that behind us and forget about it, And at that point, the strange noises stopped because the the construction issues were addressed. But now I began having experiences that I completely could not explain.
Mm.
One of the first, I was, when you came out of the garage, we had a small room that we called the mud room. There was a utility tub, our washer and dryer, and a closet. And that was the room where we kept we had, at that time, we only had one cat. His name was Moses. He was a big tabby cat. And we kept his food and water bowls there, and the litter box was in the closet and whatnot. And one night I was in the mud room feeding Moses, and my now ex-wife was upstairs in bed, and the dryer door opened by itself. Now, I was like, I have never in my life seen a dryer door open by itself. The way they snap shut and latch, that's strange, So I thought, man, that is weird,
Hmm.
And as time wore on, things began to get weirder and weirder, and things that just could not be explained. One night, one that always stands out in my mind, because when you really get down to what actually happened, it's pretty unnerving. But another night, we had gotten in the early summer of that year, we adopted a little calico kitten, and her name was Zoe. She was very tiny and super cute, just a cutest little cat, and really had a cute personality and everything. So I'm standing in the mud room one night. Again, my wife was upstairs in bed. She had already gone to bed. And I was going around checking all the doors, making sure that our security system was armed and all the doors were locked. And I, put some food in the cat's bowl. And when I did that, Zoe came running into the room and ran to the food dish and started eating. And I looked right at her and I thought, how cute. Now, obviously, Zoe's a calico. Moses was a tabby cat. I know the difference. But I walked out of the mud room, left her in there eating, walked through the house into the foyer, turned to go up the stairs to the upstairs. And there was Zoe sitting on the top step, just staring at me. And I thought, that's impossible. She can't be sitting here. I just saw her in the mud room. That's impossible. And then I thought, well, it had to have been Moses. It must have been Moses that was in the mud room. And I just thought it was Zoe. But keep in mind, I had looked right at her and even thought to myself how cute she was, So I go up the stairs. I walk past Zoe. I walk across the landing and open the bedroom door. And there was Moses sleeping on the bed with my wife. So I was like, okay, this is crazy. And I don't know how I'm going to tell her about this, because it's so crazy, So I, next day or so, I thought I have to tell her, but she's going to think I'm nuts. So I told her what happened. And when I told her, she kept saying, oh, don't even tell me that. Don't even tell me that. And I was thinking she's going to say, you are crazy, And she said, after saying, don't tell me that, she said, there are times when I'm at home alone and I'm downstairs on the elliptical. We had a little workout room in the basement. The cats were not allowed in the basement. We kept the door shut, kept them upstairs, because I had dumbbells and things, and I didn't want one of them, hurting themselves on weight equipment or something. And she said, there are times when I'm home alone and I'm downstairs on the elliptical, and I will swear I see Moses run past out of the corner of my eye. And I think there's Moses, but then I remember he's upstairs and the door's shut and he's not down here.
Oh, man.
So at that point, I was like, something is definitely strange. We both started watching. Honestly, it's the strangest thing. She, when we dated, would not watch scary movies. We watched Scream at a friend's house one time, and she got really mad because she doesn't like those movies. They bother her. So, now we're married, and because of the house, we both start watching Ghost Hunters. We both start watching A Haunting. And if you remember back in those years, those were very popular TV shows.
Yep.
And it sounds strange, but watching those shows kind of gave, I think, both of us, I can certainly speak for myself, it gave me peace of mind that this kind of stuff really does happen to people that aren't crazy. This stuff really does happen. And, I respected it on Ghost Hunters. They at least, they tried to prove things scientifically, and tried to get real evidence,
Mm-hmm.
So I respected that, and it kind of gave me peace of mind. But as time wore on, things got stranger. The activity in the house got worse, and her behavior changed drastically.
Mm.
And as it turned out, I mean, the whole situation had gotten it had gotten very strange, and it got to the point where I would come home from work at 10:30 at night, and she would be upstairs in bed, and I would go in and kiss her goodnight, and she would say, "Oh, you got to watch The Haunting that was on tonight. I recorded it. You got to watch it. It's really good." And the interesting part is, she is now a person who is watching, and if you remember A Haunting,
Yeah.
they use some of the most haunting imagery, the most creepy imagery to, push the sinister feelings of the stories that they were telling.
And that was the show. That was the show that was on. It was like not Destination, Travel Channel, Travel Channel, maybe. It was one of those.
I think that was even before. No, it may have been on a Travel Channel. I think it started on the History Channel.
I think, yeah, and then it moved once.
Yes.
But that's the show that had. It's always sticks in my mind. But they called it the portal to hell in the basement or it used to be a morgue or something. And
yep.
Okay,
yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, that actually became the movie. If I'm remembering right, that became the movie, Haunting in. Goodness, what was the name of that? It was a big movie.
Was it not The Conjuring? Conjuring? No,
it wasn't A Haunting in New England, but it was something like that.
Yeah. They had like 3 or 4 of those movies there for like about a 5-year stretch.
Yes, and yeah, that was all based on. Yeah, and the show, everything they told was based on true stories. They went to great lengths to make that show scary, and I'm thinking, we live in the middle of nowhere. We don't have neighbors close. Then our neighbors are generally Amish, and you don't feel afraid to watch that at home alone by yourself. That's weird,
Yeah, that
but
is.
it was like that's how much things had changed.
So wait, hold on. Let me ask you this real quick. So she was watching. That show was not. It wasn't like a light show. It wasn't like a ghost hunting show. It was like the imagery, and so she went from not really liking that stuff to being infatuated with it and just could not stop watching it. Is that kind
I
of?
would say I think we both kind of were that way, but it was a much bigger change for her.
Mm.
Because she, like I said, when we were dating, she wouldn't even watch, the fact that somebody played Scream, that movie, when we went to a friend's house to watch movies, she was furious. She did not like that stuff. She didn't want to see it. And now, after living in that house, she's watching it at home alone. So it was definitely a major change, but her behavior changed quite a bit all the way around. And there were multiple violent episodes. And of course I would never be violent against a female, but there were multiple violent episodes against me, and the last time it happened, I had no choice. I did have to defend myself and say, that's the end of this. This is not happening again, because it had happened multiple times. But her behavior drastically changed. Next thing you know, she wanted a divorce, and I share all the details of that in the book. But long story short, okay, we are now into the very beginning of February 2007, and now I'm there by myself.
Before you go with that, I just have a quick question, just for the listeners. What were some of the strange, like, was it knocking noises? Was it doors opening? What were some of, like, in the, when you guys were still together and in that house in that first kind of beginning, what kind of what kind of the weird stuff, like knocking on doors or some of those things? Could you describe
Okay.
some of those?
Yeah. I noticed lights flickering. I noticed the television changing channels by itself. And, we had actually even tried going to marriage counseling and a supposed Christian counselor. And I even, I expressed to this counselor that I believe there's the problem going on here is spiritual. And I tried to explain, and she wanted nothing to do with hearing anything about that. And I was like, she said, well, tell me what the activity is. I can explain it. Real condescending. And I said, well, I'll just give you a for instance. I said, the lights flicker. I said, the TV changes channels by itself. And she says, oh, that's easy. You have a satellite dish, your neighbors have one, or your neighbors are using their remote, and their remote control is changing the channels in your house. That's all that is. Well, that's impossible.
That's crazy.
But
That's a crazy explanation.
I said, really? Because I said, none of our neighbors are close to us and they're all Amish. And then
Ooh.
she was like, oh.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
she said, well, demons were active in the world in the Bible, but that's just, they're not active in our world today. And I said, where is that in the Bible? I said, the Bible never says any such thing. It says they are active in the world and they always will be, until the end. And she didn't have an answer. It was very frustrating. But then, there were weird things. Like one time, my alarm clock went off. I'd set it, and it would not turn off. And no matter what, it wouldn't. So I called her. At this point, we were not getting along at all. And I said, "Come here. I want you to see this for yourself." And she walked into the room and took the alarm clock from me, like, I'm stupid and she'll fix it. She tried everything I tried, every lever, every button. It would not turn off. She reached over and unplugged it, and she looked at me and she was like, okay, that is weird. Okay. When she left in I believe it was in October of 2006, I came home from work one day and she was gone. And I knew, this is it. She's gone.
Mhm.
Well, I didn't even know where she was. So when I eventually was able to contact her a few days later, she said, now at this point, we were not getting along, and I would sleep on the couch downstairs, and I would stay up most nights praying all night because I really didn't want to get a divorce, and I would always feel like I was being watched when I was praying. Like I would literally open my eyes and think, did she come downstairs and she's standing there watching me? What is
Mm.
going on? There would be no one. But when I finally got a hold of her, she said that the last night she was in the house at 3 o'clock in the morning, she heard someone ring the doorbell and then let themselves in the house.
No, man.
And
Oh
I
my
said,
goodness.
excuse me. And I said, I was downstairs on the couch. There's no way that could have happened without me hearing it. And I said, I certainly didn't let anyone in the house. And she said, well, I know what I heard. And I said, that did not happen. I said, I didn't let anybody in. And I said, if somebody rang the doorbell, I would have heard it. But she was adamant, and she said it woke her up. And, which I thought was very strange. But the weird part was, it was never really that she accused me of letting them in. She said they let themselves in. Kind of strange.
Man, that's more than strange. That's straight creepy.
Yes.
Man.
And I then, fast forward into February, we're divorced and I'm there alone.
That was part one of my interview with Patrick Meechan. There's a whole lot more to his story and
really the timeline of his life that he endured during his basically survival in these haunted houses. On the next part, we dive into what is going on in the house, the different types of entities, and some alleged cult activity. You guys can catch me, Yahola Tiger, on Facebook, Warcry Pod on TikTok and Instagram, realwarcrypod@gmail.com. Send me your stories. This is creepy. Part 6 is coming out sooner rather than later, but send me your stories. I'd like to hear them. And if you have anything like what you hear, let me know. Give me some feedback. I appreciate Patrick, giving me, quite a bit of his time to share his story, and I'm excited for you guys to hear the next part. And I'm going to break them down into different, like sections of his story. As you guys heard, his wife and him, had problems. The next section picks up right after that, and basically him being in the house alone for a certain number of years. But I appreciate everybody that listens and continues to support the podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one.